think it's going to be Charlie in Southampton. Charlie, hello.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for taking my call.
Not at all. Thanks for calling.
Armistice Day means a lot to me and my family. I've got family that served in the Royal British Navy. I've got very close friends that serve at the moment in the Royal British Navy. I think it's important that we remember why we celebrate Armistice Day.
Armistice Day means an awful lot to an awful lot of people. Some would say many people from World War II died fighting fascism. Fascism would not have allowed us all the liberal benefits of democracy. As it sticks in the throat, and as ghastly as this proposal is, do you think freedom of speech should trump the fact that the march should not go ahead? I mean, they shouldn't do it. It's morally wrong. I think morally repugnant, but they're clearly going to try and do it. Where does free speech fit into this?
I think, in my own personal opinion, yes, granted, free speech has its own say. However, we're talking about lads of 13, 14, 15, 16 years old going out over to Germany, France, Poland, wherever, to give their life for king and country, and I think we should never forget that. I think the ultimate sacrifice.
I think I'm here to be persuaded. Well, it's not me that matters, but I am so torn about this issue because absolutely every fibre of my body says this should not happen, and yet I'm meant to have principles on this, and I'm wondering if they've been tested. But I'm here to be persuaded. You've made a very persuasive call. Thank you very much indeed. I hope. Chris in Surrey. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Nick. Yeah, I have called about Armistice Day, but my comment on AI
is
who the hell would listen to the name of that bank?
Elon Musk? No.
No, who's the bank?
Goldman Sachs, I think.
Oh, Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs.
Yes.
Yeah, the people that crashed the system in 2008 and
Chris,
caused all the problems.
Chris, just remember this: when it comes to economic forecasters, they only exist, right, to make astrologers look respectable. Anyway, to your main point, to your main point.
Yeah, and AI will only come to the fore if it doesn't challenge the establishment. Look what the blockchain's done to the banking world, and America and the UK and Europe all trying to rush out with CBDCs. Anyway, Armistice Day.
Yeah.
Those guys. I'm ex-forces.
Yep.
I've lost friends.
You must feel strongly about Armistice Day.
I lost quite a few family members in the First and Second World Wars. Now, they died. They gave the ultimate sacrifice for our democracy and freedom of speech and right to assembly, as you say. So I'm conflicted by this. But I believe the way forward is not to ban it, although my first go-to would be, ban it. But thinking it through and thinking what those guys gave their lives for, you don't ban it, but you don't let it within 2 or 3 miles of the Cenotaph.
And we have the powers for that, to do that.
You allow them to have the right to assemble and to protest, do it in Hyde Park, do it down Holland Park Road, whatever, but nowhere near Armistice Day. And they should be, if they try to do a protest like this on any day in their countries of origin, most of them, they'd be shot.
Yeah, it's certainly true that many people enjoy the liberties who've come to this country and maybe permanent residents now in this country. Certainly didn't enjoy the freedoms from many of the countries they came from. We have David in Yorkshire on the line. Just time to take a call. David, hello.
Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. I hope you're well too. Yeah. It's the first time I've called the show, so I'm a bit nervous, but...
That's all right. You fire away. What would you like to talk about?
Yes, the point I would like to make, which I think is the elephant in the room, is Zionism. I haven't got an horse in this race, I'm a Christian. I'm not Muslim.
Just to explain, in case anyone's in any doubt, I assume you mean by the establishment of a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine is what you're talking about.
That was initially what it was about through the Balfour Treaty. Which was pushed by, because we've got to differentiate to the people who are listening who aren't quite studied in this area, because Zionism, we have Christian Zionism and Jewish Zionism, and they're in a partnership, and they want to, they wanted to create a state in Israel for the Jewish people to call their home. Especially after the atrocities of the Second World War, which I haven't got an argument about in regard to that. What I see, and the point I would like to make, so that viewers, maybe I can signpost them to do a bit more study to understand some of the confusion that seems to be revolving around this situation, is that there is that we do refer to Muslims, and we do refer to Palestinians, and then we do refer to Hamas. So we should, in equal and fair measure, refer to Israel, and we should refer to Jews, but we should also be highlighting, the socio-political movement called Zionism. Which,
I suppose the problem with that is, and it was touched on earlier in the programme, is that becomes a blurring of what's actually happened here, which is effectively a rogue state, because Hamas is, I think it's best to call them that, who are the governing power in Gaza, have led a terrorist attack on Israel. And a lot of people will say that to bring in the context of what you're talking about is blurring this. And that is the problem, isn't it?
No, I would disagree with that, Nick, because I think the blurring is a lack of transparency. I think you get blurring when people haven't got all the information on the table. I think that's...
But doesn't it attempt to justify? That's the problem.
Not at all. No, I have actually been accused in debates of doing that.
I'm sure you have, yeah, and I'm trying to avoid that because it normally ends up in a slanging match. But
well, thank you, I appreciate that.
But and I do disagree with you, and I should say that. And the reason I disagree with you is because I cannot think, if an atrocity happened on our shores, people would be trying to find a historical context for it. And yet, when it's the Jews in Israel, people try and find a historical context for it. That's my concern.
Well, I'll run a parallel. I was a soldier in Northern Ireland in the early 80s, and the Anglo-Irish Agreement. I was in Crossmaglen on the border there of South Armagh, and I spoke to the Irish people. All the press on the telly was anti-Irish, and all the rest of it. They'd been bombing in Hyde Park. The Birmingham Six, they got not guilty after serving time, but they got out.
I'm only going to have to press you for time reasons, so do get you.
It were kind of a blame and shame initiative that seems to be going on against the Irish. I spoke to the Irish people on the ground in Ireland. They were absolutely lovely people, but the perspective that I got from the media, not yourselves, but generally, was that IRA were bad. And the thing is, the point I'm making is that we didn't at that time go over and start bombing Belfast and innocent Irish people in Ireland because of the terrorism that were going on our shores. And I'd like to leave it there, Nick, because I know I'm pushed for time.
You are, and we don't have time to debate that. But let's go to Steve in Leeds. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
Very well, thank you for calling. What would you like to say?
Well, Nick, I was just listening to the rhetoric today about the Palestinian marches, and whilst I don't agree with them, I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy from a lot of the commentators that are mentioning banning it and this, that and the other. If you remember back when we had the coronation, which is a once-in-a-lifetime event, not a once-a-year event like the Armistice Day, there were people protesting against the monarchy. And their right to protest was defended by all the commentators now. Oh, no, they've got the right to protest against the monarchy.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and the people that were arrested, well, they're not arrested, detained on the day. There were about half a dozen people detained for wearing anti-monarchy T-shirts. When the police released them, the police faced a barrage of abuse about locking these people up when they were exercising their democratic rights. Well, it's the same thing. If you believe in democracy, whether you agree with the people that are protesting or not, fundamentally, That's what makes us the country we are.
Well, you see, that is where my principles come from. But there is one difference, if I may say, Steve. The people who should be locked up are those that are breaking the law, and of course that would include people advocating support for the terrorist group Hamas.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, look, I'm old enough to remember C&D marches. Yeah?
Oh, yes, so am I.
Yeah, well, yeah. And everybody was against them, but at the end of the day, we're in a democracy. And there were people in those marches, radical people, that wanted to see the end of the world and this, that. Well, what you do as a government, as a society, is say, right, within the confines of that peaceful march, there are some people that are there to advocate violence.
Normally the social workers, Sparky, or those in this case, the people who support Hamas.
You target those people, you arrest them, you prosecute them for hate crimes or whatever you want to do. But what you can't do is say, let's ban people's freedom of speech on the basis that half a dozen people or 1,000 people within 100,000 people are going to subvert the march and make it their own political views. You can't just say, well, there might be 10 people turn up that want to destroy Israel, so let's ban the whole march. Let's reduce democracy to... But
what about the choice of day, though? I mean, if they keep saying they respect the sensitivities of the day, of the importance of the day, well, if they did, they'd just move the march, wouldn't they?
Well, Nick, what I'd say is, look at the train drivers. They had strikes on most of the festival days, the Wembley days, the conference days. Yeah, they had strikes.
Well, I kind of do.
On their democratic view. So I ban the strike on that particular.
Well,
day?
I suppose the argument that is underneath that is that they want to maximise publicity. Let's go to Percy in Chichester. Hello, Percy.
Hello.
Yes.
I don't believe that they should stop this march at all.
Okay.
And anybody that does, they just ought to be deported because they're anti-British.
Sorry, anyone who does what? Disrupts it?
This parade on Sunday, I think anybody that objects to that or tries to put people off doing it,
you can't deport. Say I objected. You couldn't deport me. I'm a British citizen.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be against our country.
Well,
because that's sort of going against our country, isn't it?
But I think there are British citizens here who would be on that march. But you know, on
the march, yeah, on the march for the British Legion, yes. But I'm saying that anybody who tries to disrupt the march.
Oh, I see. You're talking about the parade. Oh,
yeah, the parade.
Okay, yes. I think any attempt to disrupt that, and if that person happened to be someone who was seeking the right to remain here, and felt that they could use a demonstration and break the law by embarking on violence or whatever it may be, or protesting in the name of Hamas, yeah, absolutely. But I wouldn't necessarily say that would be, I think that's a legitimate point. I think do you think the march should happen, however, of the protesters, Percy?
No. Not the protesters, no.
Okay,
but I think
so you'd ban them.
Should go ahead as planned.
I don't think they're going to stop the remembrance, the Armistice Day service taking place. I believe, if I'm right, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's on Sunday when the Cenotaph will be taking place. Would it be on the Sunday? But I don't think there will be. I don't think actually there is any official demonstration planned for the Sunday. I may have this wrong. I'm happy to be corrected, because we're talking about the 11th, the Saturday, which is the 11th of the 11th, when the Armistice is taking place. Percy, thank you for your call. Terry in Upminster. Hello, Terry.
Hello, Nick. I can answer two of your questions. The first thing, I'm a veteran from the Royal Navy back in the 1950s.
Yes.
And I'm also an ex-Metropolitan Police Inspector.
So you're well qualified to speak.
Yeah, and I would point out, for instance, that the lack of the police action, to me, is a disgrace, and it is to most of the people I know who retired from the force.
And that's what's fuelled I think personally, Terry, that failure to arrest people who were clearly supporting Hamas has led to just emboldening more people to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I was involved in the massive demonstrations against the Vietnam War.
Okay, yeah, back in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah, and in that days, we wouldn't have put up with that. We would go in and arrest the ringleaders and the people causing violence immediately.
Right, so they were breaking the law. It wasn't so much that they were demonstrating, they were violent and causing those issues.
That's right. We would leave the other people who were on the demonstration, just leave them alone. Now, I used to be a member of the Labour Party years ago. I would not vote for the Tories. I will not vote for Liberal Democrats or Labour. I'm going to vote Reform, and I've actually joined the party.
And were you, may I ask, you don't have to tell me, were you a Conservative voter or a Labour voter before?
No, I used to vote Labour right up until Boris.
Okay.
And I must admit we switched.
Many
Boris
did.
Came in. Yeah, and as I say, if we can go back on that other question about should it be banned, this Palestinian thing, yes, we should immediately ban it. The others should have been banned. Now, I can just point out in today's newspapers and on your news, etc., MP Bob Stewart.
Yes.
Has been found guilty of racially abused...
Which he's appealing, yes, just for your information, yeah.
But, all right, by telling him to go back to Bahrain. Now, this man had insulted him, saying, how much did you sell yourself to the Bahraini regime? Now, there is an MP, he said just that. He hasn't used violence, he's just made that statement.
But he's been found guilty in a court of racist, of using racist language and behaviour. And whatever we think of that, that is the legal process at the moment. Although I stress, I'm told today he is appealing the decision. But obviously I can't really comment more than that on Terry.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, if they can arrest an MP for one little sentence, why aren't they arresting people?
Well, listen, it's a fair analogy. I don't think it means you condone what Bob has been found guilty of. I know him. I think I'm fair. I can say Bob. But you're absolutely right. When people are being shown to be singing such basically genocidal chants, and they're choosing not to arrest them, I think there's a bit of a problem there. Listen, thank you for your call, Terry. Let's go to Tim in Lancashire. Just trying to get as many calls in as I can. Tim, hello.
Hey, Nick, all right?
Yeah, very good. You get far away.
Yeah, just a point about voting reform. And
yes,
it's not necessarily a wasted vote, even if they don't get seats and don't get in this time, because it doesn't really. If you've got conservative values, this current conservative value clearly haven't, and Labour, what's the difference?
So many people are saying that. It's extraordinary that they've let it come to this. The Conservatives,
so if you vote reform, so say you give up and don't vote reform because you think, well, they can't get in this time anyway, I'll leave it, or vote Conservative or whatever. You may as well vote reform and try and build up the brand, if you like, and get the percentage of the vote.
Tim,
looking ahead to the next.
Yeah, it's a long-term game, isn't it? You're making the point, and I would just say, by the way, I haven't used the term, and I don't think you were even suggesting I have, but I haven't used the term. It's a wasted vote. I'm saying what is the consequence of the vote. But Tim, listen, the long game is something that's been mentioned to me before, and you've got to start somewhere. I remember that, that is the truth in politics. You do. Tim, for no other reasons, I've got to read out some breaking news, but I'm going to wish you well for the weekend. Thank you very much for your call. Breaking news is now, this is interesting. Officers have made 3 arrests at Piccadilly Circus. One person was arrested after they were seen displaying a placard that could incite hatred, contrary to Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. 2 other people were arrested, one for breaching conditions of Section 12 of the Public Order Act and the other for assaulting a police officer. All 3 have been taken to Central London Police Station. Is that a sign that the police are toughening up or not? Can't share any more with you on that. I think I've just got time to take Mary in Somerset. Hello, Mary.
Oh, hello. Actually, I don't know why they keep saying Somerset.
No.
It's Dorset.
It's Dorset. Look, don't worry. Just hang on, Mary. You're fired. OK? That's it. There you go. Mary. What can I do for you?
Well, just to... well, I'm not a veteran. I'm not too... but my father was a Far Eastern prisoner of war.
OK.
And unfortunately, after being marched through Burma, what was Burma at the time, and forced to work on that railway, he came home as a young man and he managed to survive like a skeleton.
I bet.
The 5 years.
I mean, there were real horrors there, weren't there?
It was. But unfortunately, I've joined the Children of the Far Eastern Prisoner of War Society because, as you know, there's not many veterans left.
Yep.
But my dad was unfortunately, when I was 2, knocked down by an off-duty policeman. It was apparently an accident, so I'm not going down that road. But I grew up without knowing my dad and never suffered because I was so young. My mother would have done, and probably we might have ended up in different accommodation or something. But the fact is that the one thing I can do is honour Remembrance Day.
And how do you feel about the marches?
That I can do, and I've just come away from his grave, putting a wonderful poppy wreath on, and I just feel that I hope that and my daughter went into the Air Force and then married an Air Force man. So I just pray that the Cenotaph parade will go ahead.
I'm absolutely convinced we will have the Cenotaph parade going ahead, Mary. Thank you very much for that sentiment. Thank you to your family for your service. Let's see what Gerard in Belfast says. Gerard, thanks for calling the show. You can all join this call, 03444 499 1000. But Gerard, it's your turn. Far away.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I think it's totally unacceptable. This is a complete breakdown, not only of our cultural values, because what is our identity? Our identity is a combination of our history, of our culture, and our customs. And we have opened up our gates for the last 2 decades to help individuals who are suffering around the world. And this is the kind of return we get on our one of our most important days, in which we celebrate and we honor those who have fought for our country. We are being told that it's unacceptable. We are told that our customs are not acceptable and that we must conform to those who we have helped, conform to their way of life, conform to their identity, their religion, and so on. And it's unacceptable.
Is it so much that they're demanding we conform to their, as you say, and I presume when you say there, you are talking about people who have come to this country with their beliefs and their values, insisting, even though they've come here to this country to live in this country, or we assume, insisting that we conform to them. I'm not so sure if they're conforming to them, but they're not respecting our traditions and values. That's a subtle difference, isn't it? Am I wrong?
You are correct in that, but within that subtle difference lies a hidden agenda. It is, yes, they in that hidden agenda, it is them. It is what they are trying to do. They are trying to make us conform to their particular belief systems. If you have a look at since we've allowed a lot of individuals who are from the Muslim war-torn countries over the last 2 decades, and I remember this in 1999 when I first came to the United Kingdom. Way back in '97, and I served in the armed forces. I'd noticed the waves after wave, and look, I don't have a problem in helping individuals who are truly desperately moving out of a war zone. But what we've got is immigrants from the ages of 18 to 35 years old, mostly male rather than female. These are economic migrants who have come here for one purpose and one purpose only, and now they have gathered in masses to protest regarding the Palestine conflict, which is another issue. But that is a disguise in total of them trying to take away what is rightly ours, which is our cultural identity.
Gerard, you've set out your case. Thank you for doing so. Can I just ask you one quick question? Where did you come from to this country? Was it Australia?
No, South Africa.
So, sorry, from South Africa. Okay, because I think that was 1999. You said. I was going to ask what Australia's approach was to that, but my ignorance is showing there. You're South African. My son-in-law will never forgive me for that. He's South African. But thanks, Gerald. Let's just take Janet in Portsmouth, then we'll come on to our other subject. Janet, hello.
Hello.
What would you like
Jeanette,
to say?
Thank you.
Is it Jeanette? OK, let me... Just hang on, Jeanette. I'm going to fire someone for getting your name wrong. OK? They're just leaving now. You crack on.
Oh, good job we've got a sense of humour.
We have. Well, we need it in these times, don't we?
I definitely don't think next weekend these marches should be banned. I think they should just be postponed for the good of the country, that's all.
Yeah.
And if they're not reasonable, well, then they'll have to be dealt with, won't they?
And that's tolerance, isn't it? You know, it's just say, OK, we respect that. Simon, what's the chances of Jeanette's request being observed?
I think that's what's this is my guess, that's what will happen. Politicians will intervene. They'll ensure that the protests are postponed, and the organisers, if they have any sense, will go along with that and not encourage people to turn up anyway. But if they do turn up, then it could get messy.
That's potentially the problem, Jeanette, isn't it? That some people, the extreme people, will try and turn up anyway and provoke the police.
The thing is, though, I mean, we're letting in all these people in every day, you know, without a qualm, and then we expect the police to deal with them. I just think we've got the priorities all wrong, really.
Oh, well, Jeanette, I think you speak for thousands. Let's go to Jim in West London. Jim, hello.
Yeah, hi, Nick. Thanks for taking my call.
And thank you for calling. Over to you.
Yeah, it's very simple, really. It's sort of picking up on a couple of points that you've said about the tolerance of protesters. So if you've got a march on Armistice Day near the Cenotaph, it's got problems. And if you ban it, you could potentially have a bigger problem. So they're going to march anyway. Why not, well, without involving the armed forces, why not move them away from the delicate areas, the sensitive areas, put them into, have an organised march, Park Lane and Hyde Park. They can have their freedom of speech at Speaker's Corner, and just keep them away from the sensitive areas. They'll be there otherwise.
Yeah, now they have said that they're going to keep it, I think, a mile, if not from the Cenotaph. I believe that they've offered to do that, but many people will still find this quite offensive for the slight difference here, Jim, which, by the way, I think it's a really sensible solution, and particularly if you talk about one of the big parks, is that because we've now seen this increase in naked anti-Semitism, there are Jewish people who live all over London. So wherever they gather, many are going to feel threatened or unsafe. Unless we contain that and unless we arrest those people and deal with them. I think that's the slight difference here. But yeah, I think that's all the cards. Could it work, Simon?
No, I don't think it could, to be honest. I live in central London. I live in Pimlico, and I see protests, you know, every weekend on a whole variety of different issues. And what's being asked for I think, by majority of Londoners, by the greater British public, is that on this weekend, we don't want you coming into London, because the reality is, whatever the distance is between the Cenotaph and this protest, you've got a lot of protesters on a particular issue, with a small minority who are anti-Jewish, who are really anti-Semitic.
And on the tubes, as we saw, singing those hostile songs.
And they will find it irresistible to protest at Oxford Circus, Piccadilly Circus, at stations, as we've seen. It will happen again, and we should say zero tolerance for this particular weekend. It's dedicated to remembering those who fought for this country and created the freedom of speech and the ability to protest in the way that you are doing. Let's celebrate and think about
very
that.
clearly said, Simon. Let's go to another Simon. Simon in Winchester. Hello, Simon. Thank you very much for calling.
Hello. Good afternoon to you.
And what can we do for you?
Quick 5 points. Number one, we talk a lot about freedom of speech and freedom to protest and freedom this and freedom that. And I was taught by a very wise old Tibetan priest who said to me, Simon, freedom you do not have freedom until you have discipline. Work that one out.
Self-discipline?
Freedom requires to feel free, to be free, you need a discipline. And it's a fundamental aspect of philosophy that the press, the media, the politicians simply blindly ignore.
Well, it's not lost on Simon. You're nodding your head in agreement there with Simon in Winchester.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, a smart Tibetan master has taught him something very wise there, I think. And it shows, doesn't it, that many of these protesters are wholly intolerant of other people's views. You know,
it's a lack of respect. Simon, where did respect fit in?
It's a lack of humanity. It's at the root of a lot of the problems we have today. It is the whole problem of humanity. But I mean, this is another huge subject, and I'm probably way off track.
Well, in a way you are. But let me narrow it down, because your broad point is absolutely, totally understood. But to most people, I think it would present itself as a lack of respect for other people, whether it's property people, their views, their values, isn't it? We've lost that, surely. If these marchers who are showing respect for the dead, never mind the living, it wouldn't happen, would it?
Well, exactly. That's why I use this word humanity in a rather broad sense to cover exactly what you've just said. Humanity is getting diluted and lost, and that in that humanity is this lack of respect and all these considerations that one human being should have for another.
What does it mean? Here's a huge question. I'm gonna ask this just to see how you deal with this, Simon, in the little time you've got. What does this mean for liberal democracies like ours, which were founded on tolerance and free speech and so forth?
As I say, if you have the discipline, you can understand tolerance. You can understand the necessity for tolerance.
But clearly, it's not there, is it?
And that's the whole point. And intolerance is a great sickness of our time today.
Dennis in London, hello.
Hello.
Hi, what would you like to talk about?
Just a little, well, not a little thing, quite a big thing.
Yep.
I'm not a religious Jew. I'm a Jew, proud Jew, 85 years old, and have various memories of various things. But one thing, any synagogue goer will tell you that part of your service is a prayer to the ruling monarch, or in America the president, or whatever it is, and part of the religion is you have to follow your host country's laws, rules, regulations.
When in Rome, do as Rome was the old phrase, wasn't it?
Yes, but more so the fact that you were told you don't try to change the people around you, you try to live with them. Whereas in Islam, it's the exact opposite. It's you try to make the country follow Islam.
Well, does it... look, I've got to ask this question, but where does it say that in the Quran? Is it as clear as mud? Because I confess to being ignorant for the evidence to support that. It's not that I don't want to disbelieve you, but, Dennis, I have to challenge it because I've never read it. Mind you, I haven't read the Quran either.
Regulations. I'm not saying the Jews that are in banking are saints. I'm not saying they're sinners. All I'm saying is that they have to follow the rules and regulations.
No, but you're saying in Islam...
Banking doesn't. It's done so that it's all on the black market and they can do what they like and there's no way of checking it.
Let Simon... Dennis, Simon wants to chip in here.
Yeah, no, well, I wanted to thank Dennis, first of all, for giving me an insight into how his religion works. That's absolutely fascinating. But I also take Dennis's point, which is there has been a lot of hate preach in some mosques in the UK. I mean, time and again...
And they're not relinquishing now, are they?
No. I mean, we get examples on a regular basis, whether it relates to Palestine or the situation in Gaza. There's video recently of hate presentations and discussions, and that really has to... but it happens on a regular basis. I mean, it's not irregular. So I do take Dennis's point on that.
Dennis, listen, thanks very much indeed for kicking that conversation in that direction, and as you say, thank you for shedding some light on that issue of particularly, I think, about respect for the country that you're living in. I mean, it's fundamental, isn't it? I mean, I would not go to the Gulf states or the Middle East and start, for example, dressing offensively, which is just because I respect it's the way that it's their country. Let's go to Jennifer in London. Jennifer, hello.
Hello, good morning, afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
I'm really on the same theme in a way as your previous caller, because why, for one weekend in the whole year, can't we have a very peaceable, quiet reflection, which is very important to the British people? Why can't these people have no respect or tolerance? And we have to respect everything to do with their way of life.
Well, just to clarify there, Jennifer, because I think it's worth saying, you're absolutely right. Everyone on that march should show respect and not do it next week. I totally agree with that. But some of those people are also, we've seen them there, they are people who've been brought up in this country, born in this country, as British as you and I, going back, you know, generations, as well as what I would say first-generation immigrants into this country. So there's even people within this country who I would argue should know better, not showing that respect as well.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with that. But it's the fact that probably they're brought up to think this way, or to act this way. And you know, in an ideal world, the Jewish people and the Palestinian people should be able to march together in London against the atrocities that are happening to human beings.
Yes.
And unfortunately, you know, that will never happen. But also, you know, you can have a protest where people say nothing, don't shout. It's all this shouting, like we did when we protested against the Iraq war. And can I just say one other thing, which may seem trivial to most people, but it really actually struck home to me, was when the Prince and Princess of Wales went to visit, I don't know if it was an Islamic centre or a mosque or whatever, and they reported in the paper that when the Princess of Wales went to extend her hand, it was rejected by the head of whatever it was she was visiting. And I found that so disrespectful in a country where you're meeting probably the future Queen of England. You live in England, and you can't respect somebody who they're British, you know, and the way we act in this country. But if we went into a mosque, we would have to, as the Queen did, remove our shoes, wear clothes where we're all covered up. And, you know, we have to respect their values, but they cannot even extend a hand of greeting to a future monarch.
Tolerance and respect goes both ways. And I'm really pleased I'm exploring this theme, because I think it's bringing people on to talk about it. And I wouldn't say it's taking the heat out of the issue, but I think it is getting to a little understanding of why British folk, the majority of British folk, find it deeply offensive what's happening. That's a great call. Thank you very much indeed, Jennifer, for that. Right, let's go to Alan in Brighton. Hello, Alan.
Hello.
Hi, what would you like to talk about?
Well, the question I like to ask, and this is, I mean, I don't understand, and I don't know if anyone else does. What has the Jewish people done from the beginning of time to make them hated to this present day? What did they do? Did they do something? What is it about the Jews that people hate?
You're asking me a question that I don't think I can answer, because I confess I am with you, you know, because it is an extraordinary situation that through history, Jewish people have been the target of anti-Semitism. You know, I'm not just talking about the 20th century, are we? I mean, it seems in time immemorial, Alan. Maybe someone would like to come on and explain their views on that, because, you know, I'm not going to purport or expand on the myth that goes with this anti-Semitism, but it's a legitimate question. Let me ask you why you're asking, though, Alan. Is it just a thirst for knowledge?
Yes, it is, because, as I say, I want to be educated, because I just don't know the answer to that. It's, I mean, I don't know if this is true or whether it is or whether it isn't. The Promised Land. Where is the Promised Land that the Jewish people eventually ended up? Where is it?
The thing is, this is interesting, because to talk about reasons why they are hated, you start to get into this area where it sounds like you're trying to explain away and justify what is happening. And of course, there is no. This is racism. It is, you know, it is it's a nasty, vociferous type of racism, and it's called anti-Semitism for a reason. But you know, we start to get into that territory, don't you, where your people will start to say, "Oh, it's because of this, therefore it justifies it." We're seeing it over over Gaza. How so within a matter of hours, the atrocities carried out by the on the Jewish people on the 7th of October. People wanted to provide context and explain what was happening, and no, it's really clear what was happening. People were butchered by terrorists, and yet this blurring happens, doesn't it?
Exactly right, and obviously the Hamas and the Palestinian people would obviously know that there was going to be a retaliation for what they did, and many of their people will die, which is exactly what's happening.
Alan, great question, great call. One I'm loath to actually give airtime to, in a way, because I think people will try and use it as a justification. Ishmael in London. Ishmael, hello.
Hi, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm very well. What would you like to talk about?
Well, the current situation in Gaza.
Okay.
I think, look, we need to look at, first, there's certain aspects of this. First, we need to look at like, for example, with any illness, any problem, you look at you diagnose a problem, then you go work out a cure. So we have to look at long-term solution, short-term solution, and how can we, first and the most important thing is how do we avoid civilian losses? That's really the first and foremost and most important thing. How do we avoid these civilian killings? So the first thing I think, if we have any, if we have any morality or any humanity, and surely we should all be pushing for a ceasefire. I know people they keep on saying that ceasefire, then Hamas will do this, Hamas will do that. I think realistically,
they probably will. That's the truth, though.
You see, look at it this way. There's something called opportunity cost. You might have to give something to gain something. If we really want to. In economic states, obviously, that if we really want to gain something, then we may have to lose a little bit. We have to get.
Let me just listen. We'll have a good discussion on this, Ishmael. But I think Israel would say they've given lives in the most horrific circumstances. Yeah, but and they have to defend themselves from that again, don't they?
Yeah, but look at the bigger picture. Well,
no, that is the fundamental. The biggest picture is you must defend your country. Any government in the world. And that's what they've got to do. And the only way to do that for them is to get rid of Hamas.
No, but let's be realistic, Nick.
Well, that is realistic. That's what they're doing. It's very real.
Defence is different from bombarding innocent civilians. That's not defence.
But that presumes they're deliberately going out and targeting civilians. They will give lots of reasons why they believe Hamas are using civilians. They're hiding civilians, and their goal is to get Hamas. The only targeting of civilians was when Hamas targeted civilians deliberately when they invaded, surely. And that's the problem you've got here. Am I right to defend my country?
Of course, every country has a right to defend its borders. That goes without saying. But defence does not mean that gives you a carte blanche to kill and maim innocent civilians with a pretext. With a rhetoric that we're defending ourselves. That's ridiculous.
It's not rhetoric. But look, I put the case there. Then Hamas should surrender and give up the hostages. That would sort it, wouldn't it?
Well, look. At the same time, Nick, they've got look at how many Palestinian children, adults, without charge, are held in Israeli prisons without charge. Thousands upon thousands. They're held without charge every year. It's documented.
But that isn't quite. Look, there may very well be those people in prison. I have no idea, and I'm just going to accept that at face value and let others argue whether that's the case or not. I'm sure there are prisoners, but let's not get into the weeds there. The only way, surely, here is for Hamas to cease control of Gaza, surrender, and release the hostages, because the alternative is. Israel will say we're under threat, that they'll do this again, and until we root them out, we can't defend our country.
No, but we could look at the diagnosis as well, Nick. Diagnosis, look, from 1948, when the inception of Israel took place, at the expense of 750,000 Palestinians losing their homes, being ethnically cleansed, losing about approximately 12,000 lives.
But hang on, this is blurring it. Your context is blurring. You want to settle the immediate crisis. You said you want a ceasefire. That's the immediate. You don't bring in all the blurring of the past when you call for a ceasefire.
No, what I'm saying...
Well, that is what you said.
No, I'm saying prevention is better than cure. We want to stop this happening ever again.
And you said by a ceasefire, right?
Yeah.
Which is the here and now. It's nothing to do with the past. It's nothing to do with context. It is ceasefire now.
Yeah, it is ceasefire now. That's what we're saying.
And I'm saying that can't work because their duty is to defend their country. And no one in their right mind would do that.
That's a ludicrous statement, with all due respect.
What, that Israel have the right to defend themselves?
In the name of that has been what do you call it, polluted. That phrase, Israel has a right. Realistically, look at paragraph 139 of the International Court of Justice's advisory, Article 51. Nick, please do look it up.
I have very little respect for the role of the United Nations these days, but of course I will happily look it up. I'm not going to do it now. I will happily look it up. But it's a road you're going down that does to dismiss the right to defend your country from Hamas, who are still sending their bombs in as well. Let's not forget that. They're still doing their very best to kill and maim. The idea that you give a ceasefire when they are holding onto these hostages and are ready to attack again and a call for the annihilation of Israel, that's ludicrous.
But Israel is annihilating the Gaza Strip, in front of our eyes, and we're
this is why we get nowhere, isn't it? This is the problem, because this is the problem with the whole issue, isn't it, Ishmael? Right? It really is.
Losing their lives.
Yes.
They're losing their lives in front of our eyes, and we're still going to back up the oppressor. Come on, Nick.
Well, no, there is... You see, I love this talk about oppressor. You know, 1.6 million Arabs live in Israel. They're not actually oppressed, are they? Right? Okay? So let's cut all that ridiculous language and address the issue you asked. And I'm saying to you, give me one single reason why Israel, right, should actually call a ceasefire when they are still at risk of greater attack and their people are held captive by Hamas.
Well, the first thing is innocent lives can be saved. If we don't have that in our mindset, then I'm afraid we've lost the plot.
No, look, there's not a bit of breath of paper between us on the cost and horrors of what's happening in Gaza, but all you are doing is inviting more conflict and horrors.
I'm
That's
saying
the reality.
I'm saying the long-term solution should be a two-state solution, but to reach that,
I wish it would. I wish we could get there.
To avoid this happening again, to avoid this continuous barrage, like for example,
Hamas should leave Gaza, surrender, and give up the hostages, because there's no way we would have an organisation like that next to us, chucking bombs at us in the United Kingdom.
But why would they chuck bombs, Nick? Listen, this is...
Well, why would they go in and slaughter babies and kids?
See, that's what I'm saying. Look,
well, no, why would they?
No, those facts are, they're a bit murky there. But anyway, look, whatever's happened on this, any innocent life, even on October 7th of October, for example, it is appalling. That should never be. That should never take place. But my point is, look, we want to avoid this happening again. And the thing is, look, this has been happening over and over. 27th September 2008, for example, Nick.
Okay.
Look at it.
Look, Israel, I think it's not like I don't want to stop talking about the past. I think you've actually aired that a couple of times now, but we are, in fact, way over a time, because you are an alternative voice. I think we should have an alternative voice whenever we can, and I welcome the fact that you called. I mean, we fundamentally disagree. I'm not too surprised, because, in my opinion, the strategy of getting rid of Hamas has to be the duty of the State of Israel.